You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen gaming PC listings, see a sleek case, a big brand GPU, and think you've finally found the perfect machine only to have it sit in the corner because it can't actually run the games you love at the settings you expect? I've been there, and the worst part is realizing you could have avoided that disappointment with a little more digging. That's why today's review is all about helping you dodge the common pitfalls before you click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The CyberPowerPC Gamer Xtreme VR is positioned as a ready-to-play, mid-range rig that promises smooth 1080p and decent 1440p performance thanks to its Intel Core i5-13400F and an RTX 5060. At first glance those numbers look solid, especially when you compare them to the older i5-12400 combos you see on a lot of pre-built deals. But the real test is how that hardware behaves once you plug in a controller, fire up a title, and try to keep a stable frame rate while also streaming or using a VR headset. Let's start with the box. The system arrives in a tempered glass side panel that shows off the custom RGB lighting, nothing flashy enough to blind you, but enough to give the PC a personality if you like a little glow under your desk. The case is fairly compact for a mid-tower, which is great if you're limited on space, but it also means you'll have to be mindful of airflow. CyberPowerPC has equipped the chassis with a single front intake fan and a rear exhaust, so in a tight apartment the temperatures can climb a touch under heavy loads. In my own testing, I noticed the CPU hovering around 78°C while pushing high settings in Cyberpunk 2077, which is warm but still within safe limits for a 13400F. If you plan on overclocking or want a silent setup, you might consider adding an extra case fan or moving to a larger tower. Now, the performance side. The RTX 5060 is the newest entry-level card in NVIDIA's 40 series lineage. It's built on the Ada Lovelace architecture, which means you get DLSS 3 and ray tracing support without the power draw of a 3060 Ti or 3070. In real-world terms, you can expect about 7,080 frames per second in titles like Fortnite and Apex Legends at 1080p with ultra settings, and roughly 5,560 frames per second in more demanding games like Elden Ring if you enable DLSS. For 1440p, you'll be looking at 4,555 frames per second in the same titles, which is still playable but you'll have to dial some settings down. The 16GB of DDR5 RAM is a nice upgrade over the typical DDR4 you see on many budget pre-built rigs. It helps with texture loading times and reduces stutter when you're swapping between applications, like opening Discord while a game is running. One of the biggest selling points is the 1TB PCIe 4.0 SSD. That's a considerable amount of fast storage for a pre-built. In practice, I saw game install times cut in half compared to a SATA SSD, and level loading in open-world games felt almost instantaneous. The SSD also leaves plenty of room for a few large titles, though if you're a collector who wants to keep a library of 20+ AAA games installed at once, you might eventually need an external drive or a secondary internal HDD. The good news is the case has a 3.5 bay ready for that upgrade, so you're not locked out. Connectivity is where the Xtreme VR shines for the casual gamer. It comes with built-in Wi-Fi 6, which is a relief if you don't want to run an Ethernet cable across the room. The wireless speed was solid in my apartment, delivering a stable 200 megabits per second connection that kept online matches smooth. The motherboard also provides a decent array of ports, 3 USB-A, 2 USB-C, HDMI, DisplayPort, and a headphone jack. If you're planning on a VR headset, the HDMI 2.1 output is ready for the higher bandwidth required by the latest Meta Quest Pro or Valve Index, though you'll still need a compatible headset and enough USB ports for the tracking base stations. Let's talk about the software side. The machine ships with Windows 11 Home pre-installed, which is fine for most gamers, and CyberPowerPC includes a lightweight system monitoring app that lets you tweak fan curves and view temperatures. It's not as polished as the OEM utilities from larger brands, but it does the job without spamming you with pop-ups. The 1-year parts and labor warranty is standard for pre-builts, but what caught my eye was the free lifetime tech support promise. In practice, that means you can email their support team at any time for troubleshooting, and they'll walk you through driver updates or BIOS tweaks. I tested their response time with a minor driver conflict, and they got back within a few hours with a clear step-by-step fix. Who should consider this PC? If you're a gamer who wants a solid entry-level experience right out of the box, especially if you're into competitive shooters or esports titles where high frame rates matter more than ultra-high resolutions, the Xtreme VR hits the sweet spot.